My name is Benjamin Ashitey Amarh, and I'm presenting on the politicization of education, a bane to Ghana's educational system and a threat to sustainable development. The article underpins the threats to sustainable development of Ghana due to the politicization of the country's educational system. If we all agree that there is a positive correlation between national development and a nation's achievement in education, then the assertion that a nation's growth is always equal to the level of its intellect is also true. Unfortunately, most politicians have used this as a political tool that has been a bane to the educational system in Ghana, and as such a threat to national development. Even though there has been a number of definitions for education, in its simplest, I choose to pick the simplest form of definition, which I say is the development of an individual according to his needs and demands in the society of which he finds himself. Of course, I cannot also define education and leave sustainable development. So I define sustainable development as a development that meets the demand of the present generation without compromising the need of the future generation. When you check, I also used the methods of study. I used both primary and secondary data in order to meet the intention of the study. And for me, I think the primary data came from the observation of education trends in Ghana as initiated and executed by the various governments, while the secondary data came from the historical events and records that was used to make this research possible. Politicization of education is simply the manipulation of education for political interest, more often to score cheap political points. I also look at the overview of education, that is the landscape of education in Ghana till now. Now, I use Rudolph and Rudolph definition of politicization of education, for which it states that politicization of educational institution as the appropriation of educational structures and resources and displacement of educational goals by organized political and community interests. In other words, as Zaga defined it, politicization of education as the manipulation of education for political interests, like I've said before. Politicization, of course, duration. Now I'm looking at the areas of education that politicians more often than not politicize for their gain. And in Ghana, we can talk of politicization of the course duration. A special example is the second cycle education in Ghana, where the previous administration brought it from 4 years to 3 years. And as I'm talking to you now, the current government is also contemplating on changing it from 3 years to 4 years again. All these things cannot just be looked at in the political lens, because we are killing our educational system gradually with politics. The frequent negotiation between government and educational workers is also one that can be discussed as an area where politicians use to destroy the political system of Ghana. The educational policies of Ghana have been politicized from 1992, since we began the democratic rule of Ghana. Again, we can also talk of the politicization of educational allowances due educational workers. That is the nursing training allowances, the teachers training allowances, the graduate course. It favors one political party or not, or because one political party wants to use it as a cheap political tool. There is an urgent need for the setting up of an autonomous educational commission to come up with a comprehensive blueprint for national educational development, and every government must accept to implement without any chance of compromise. Educational experts may be considered, but the interference of political figures must not be tolerated. Again, all stakeholders in education, including politicians, the Ministry of Education, and the Ghana Education Service, and the district assemblies, private investors, traditional and religious leaders, including parents, must play their role in every capacity to help reverse the canker that is destroying the nation's future and threatening to the sustainable development of Ghana. Again, proper allocation of funds by the central government to the sector must not be overlooked, and also must be regulated so as politicians will not misuse the funds meant for educational purposes in Ghana. In a nutshell, indeed, education is a key to sustainable development of any economy, especially that of Ghana and the Sub-Saharan African. And so there is the necessity for special attention to be given to the sector. We live in a society where more often than not, the income of an individual is dependent on the level of education of that person. If people with education earn more than those without, then the same is true for nations. Therefore, for education to contribute outstandingly to sustainable development of a nation, it must be decoupled of politics. The duration of second cycle education in Ghana, educational allowances due, basic education policy are some of the identified key areas that politics has taken over. Some consequences were also identified, and like I said, recommendations made accordingly. Thank you.